In this video, we're going to take a look at an overview of the sculpting tools within Cinema 4D. So we're going to begin by pulling in a mesh to this scene, and it's important to note that you can sculpt on any object regardless of how it's made, as long as it's made editable. So we could start with a parametric primitive. We could start with a 2D spline that we then used one of our NURBS modeling tools to create geometry with, but we have to make those editable, so we're actually working with points and polygons before we can begin to sculpt on those objects. Also, when you get Cinema 4D, you're given lots of sculpting presets within the content browser, and that's where I'm going to go right now. So if I go to content browser and under presets, sculpting, I can go to base meshes, and I've got all these base meshes to choose from. So in this case, I'm just going to grab the male bust, double click, that'll bring that in, and just going to come in and for the moment pull this outside so I'm not looking at that texture. And so here's the geometry. I'm just going to change my display so I can see the geometry on the object. And so it's just a simple mesh. And when I'm ready to sculpt on this, it's very simple to get started. You just go to the sculpt menu and choose subdivide, and that will add a sculpting tag to the object that is selected. Now, before you do that, it's important to note over here to the right we have this cogwheel that indicates settings for any parameters. So if I click on that, this gives me sculpting subdivision options. And what this is a control over how the smoothing algorithm is applied to the mesh. So this needs to be considered right from the start because it's not something you can go back and change. Once you've set this in motion, it's tied to that sculpt tag and you can't go back and change it. So it's important, what kind of model are you creating? Are you creating a hard surface model like a science fiction weapon or some kind of mechanical device, or are you creating something more organic like a human head or an alien head or something like that? So if you are going the organic route, then you're going to want that smoothness value pretty high, whereas if you're going for a more hard surface modeling type, you're probably going to want that smoothness value to be on the low end. So I'm going to click cancel here and then just go back to sculpt, subdivide, and now you'll see a sculpt tag has been added to the right of the object. HUD system has come up in the viewport, giving me access to what layer I'm on, because we can, as you'll see, be able to sculpt across multiple layers. This allows for all kinds of options of blending and creating things like morph targets for the pose morph tag later on. It tells us our current subdivision level, and then the polygon count for that current level. So when I want to add subdivision levels to this model, I just hit that subdivide again. So now I'm on current level 1, and my polygon count has gone up to 3308 from 800. So now if I want to look at some of the controls that I have in the sculpt menu, I can decrease my subdivision level, raise my subdivision level. We have brushes, which we're getting ready to look at, masking options, baking options, and different options for projecting the mask and symmetrical sculpting, which we can also control on a brush by brush basis as well. So bake sculpt is later on in the process when you're actually trying to get out your high resolution look of your model into a lower resolution mesh. So for right now, I'm going to actually look at the sculpt tag, and with this selected here, so sculpt is highlighted here, I can go in here and click on the show layer manager, and this is going to give me the actual controls within the sculpt tag itself. So here I can slide back and forth between sculpt levels. I can also add layers, clear layers, delete layers, add folders. So if I've got maybe some different emotional cues, angry eyes or sad eyes or whatever, I could have those grouped in folders for different facial gestures, things like that. Options for copying masks, merging layers, some of your typical layer controls, merging layers, flattening the entire layer hierarchy, and also options for deleting higher levels. So maybe we have 10 levels. We've decided, well, 7's about as much as we're getting really any added value to it. You set it at layer level 7, and then say delete higher levels, and all the rest are gone. So lots of options, also some mirroring options, which is similar to what, if you're familiar with the pose morph tag, you create a facial gesture, maybe an intense eye sculpt on one side. You can mirror that to the other side, etc. So let's look at some of the brush tools within the sculpting system. And before I do that, I'm going to increase my subdivision level a little bit more. And now I was in points mode, so it was looking at the base mesh. As I go into model mode, you can actually see the shift as I've increased the subdivision level. So that's how you load in the sculpt tag. In the next video, we're going to take a look at breaking out these brushes and getting started on sculpting our model.